and that you can respond to. If you need any clarification, any comments that you want to make. Yes, Harish.
Thank you, and thank you both of you. I think I have not read. I'm so sorry that I have not read the book yet. But out of the discussion, the kind of discussion that we have, the link between history and politics.
Is that the speaker there? We can't hear.
Is there a speaker?
No. Loudly. So, this link between history and politics, and probably this linkage is part of what they call the Dalit Bahujan reading of history. For that matter, the Phule's perspective to deal with how to read the text, or later on Ambedkar's intervention to engage with Buddhism as a key interlocutor to understand the past. And of course, and therefore probably more than modernist, he also had that kind of a cultural link from the past. And through that, he developed a sense of how the lower caste or those who are not part of the social elites can write history. And probably later on, of course, with the arrival of BSP in Uttar Pradesh, the way the local icons, leaders, and smaller communities come up with a kind of a grand narrative about their own past. And Badri Narayan's work is actually upon that, and he basically discovered that. The problem is, of course, that though these values to write and imagine and discover history is part of the Dalit Bahujan grand project, it simply fall down. And of course, what has happened with Sohil Dev for that matter, or Uda Devi, or many other local icons that now been appropriated by the BJP. There is a value where it was connected with the larger idea of modernity, that the local should be celebrated, not only certain icons from the social elites. That was a counter that which has coming from a kind of a vision for the nation building. That was not accepted by at that part of time those who were the ruling elites. And therefore, now it has been appropriated by the right. There was a vision, there was a perspective, there was a kind of a grand narrative, which, as coming, not was a kind of a subaltern writing of history. It was a modernist history in which the icons and the historiography will have its own methods and approach, which basically now been appropriated by the right, and that they are basically doing a better work than what left or the nationalists of that part of time were doing. So I think this link with what you suggested, that it is missing Ambedkar, but there is a kind of a hidden link between this kind of history and what was the actual project at the beginning. Thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you, Harish. I totally, this is exactly the point. What you have much more kind of beautifully put it, and very clearly. You know, they were not without vision actually, these histories. Yes. And also merely just if the name is missing, it does not, the tenor, the philosophy is not behind that, writing these histories or connections between that. You know, and also this laziness on who will appropriate whom, it was also there. Somebody responded very quickly about it, and other people were sleeping that time. So that's, I mean, how can we help this you know? I mean, if you're sleeping at the right moment, actually, and somebody came and run away with that project, and now you're running behind that. So thank you, Harish.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one quick clarificatory thing to you. One of the things, I mean, it was fascinating, and I'm waiting to read the book, after which we can have a probably more productive conversation. One of the things that you were saying, which struck me very strongly, and makes me think about things that partly links to what Ajay had said, is the death of old gods and the rise of new gods. Now this becomes the site of doing politics. Okay, this conception of the political is not something that we find in the language of representing politics that comes with a modernity or the high modernity. Now, part of it has to do with our forgetting that high modernity is also local production. It's highly localized, which has been universalized. And part of it has also to do with the fact that if I am, though Satyendra is saying that there is no such antithesis, but if the vernacular or the local questions the received categories of high modernity, why is that not also normative? Why does that not have normative implications? In my mind, the moment we talk about having normative concerns or ethical concerns, we are trying to create an extra political zone. We are keeping politics and this morality two different spheres, and we are not letting the ethical aspect become politicized, and which is, I think, what is coming to be illustrated in what Satyendra was saying. Now, the quick question that I have, so instead of, for instance, Ajay was taking it to macro, why can we, I think in a nutshell, with reduction, one could say that, why is it not going up to the macro level, to the larger structural transformative question, what we are getting out of this study? My question would be going to, kind of deeper locality, that how far do you think this trajectory of, this fascinating trajectory of Gurjar politics, where social justice and the claim to cultural nationalism are coming together? And that's, kind of quite unsettling to think about, these two coming together. To what extent it has to do with, A, the Gujars' deprivation during the Green Revolution period, which Jats made most of in this area, and so there was a different kind of resentment, if I understand correctly, among the Gujars for a long time, which found a release with the making of Gurgaon and the acquisition of land, where fertile or infertile land no longer made any.
Making of Noida, more Noida than
Noida, but also Gurgaon, where the price of land kind of underwent a radical kind of change because of development, and which resulted in now at least 2 or 3 generations of Gurjar, young Gurjar people who have a lot of money, but not that much of social or cultural capital. And there's a different kind of asymmetry between aspirations and capabilities that have grown. Because if they have access to money, why wouldn't they, let's say, have proper recognition in society? So does it have something to do with those kind of anxieties? Anxieties that you've seen, let us say, the social milieu in Delhi as well. Reminding us of, villages populated by Gurjars around in and around Noida. So those.
Well, you yourself has answered, the question, but I think, I'm audible? So the point of, I think one of this is where the local is not static, because the relational, and I pointed out the Gujar and Jat relationship in one of the chapters, how they used to be together until 1925. And the Jats said to Gujars, you form your own caste association. They used to share same platform in the Muzaffarnagar until that. Say, we don't want to, it's not like any fight or anything. That was a time, I think, Jats were more settling in the agriculture economy. They were, getting into the power politics. Charan Singh came to the scene. And there was kind of a politics between, slowly they try to shift from, from the brotherhood, from larger brotherhood, Jat-Gujar brotherhood, to different dynamic. So, of course, there has been the language which generally we will use in different language, but I think there is a jealousy, there is a sense of left behind, and the Gujars has been felt very disgruntled about that. We could not
For a long time.
For a long time, and they were almost out of the politics. So that's where the bigger linkages comes. This new liberal economy, where all the land grab movement started, and opening of BSP. That's also key. I mentioned it, how BSP opened the venue for Gujars. And Gujars were the first, if you look at the first, 84, those who are familiar with that the Gujars were given tickets actually. And they were very, very happy. Like, we got a platform somewhere. Where Congress was not just using them as a vote bank. And they all shifted. This whole then, this in local and as well as the national dynamics. They're all interrelated. It's not just something is happening in local and is isolated. And that's why I say, antithetical, I think the too difficult word to digest. I would say there is a tension, but I think there is always these interactions. and how these communities, they're not static communities, just we think about. So in 90s comes, Gujars get this capital, and then they started in politics. It's not like it started, they were already had ambition, they were already organization. I told, they had a caste association in 1908. It's not just like this today you think. And if you read that these histories, they tell the vision of this nation. Read these histories. And the songs, music, all pamphlets. So they're not devoid of the bigger vision and just society and alternative nation state. That's what my response is.
Yes.
So it was a fascinating lecture. While the religious turn of caste that you were talking about, and the kind of political change and religious change that Gujar community went through, and I was reminded of the idea of Badri Narayan's assimilation with dignity, what he calls about, how these local religious, gods or deities are being accommodated into larger pantheon of what we call Hindutva religious program, with the kind of dignity that they endorse to them, and which is kind of bringing the change in the political texture where they are becoming part of their larger nation projects. So how do you see this assimilatory program that they have for different communities all around, particularly amongst subalterns? And second question about me was about the Arya Samaj that you were mentioning and the history that Arya Samaj has, particularly in this region of Uttar Pradesh. However, Arya Samaj remained anti-Brahminical to a point that they were opposing caste, but a point where they met together, they came together, was the point of cow slaughter. The movement against cow slaughter was very much important in a way that they brought both these diverging groups together. And at this point, the conservative Hindus are coming together with Arya Samaj, and the kind of riots that are taking place in 90s, early in the 20th century, like 1910s and 20s in Meerut, are important ones. They are happening at the point of Bakrid and all, which Sandhya Freitag and other people have nicely captured. So I wanted to know how this continuity between Hindutva, nationalism, or a kind of communal Antigone keeps on going on.
So in other sense, what I was saying is that Hindutva is not necessarily an appropriation. So the problem would be in framing it. So if you were to rephrase it not as an appropriation, but an organic extension of the local, how would we study the process?
See, it's a difficult question, and I will try to answer. I don't know if I can answer, but this is the debate I have been having in my mind always, because that's a very burning question. So I don't have how to articulate the steady, because I studied this region for a long time actually. I think you can say one way, it's not a appropriation and it was there. But you can also say other way around. Without writing a history of community relationship in that particular region across the time, we can't reach a very, I think, kind of a thoughtful and rich answer. Because we still don't know, we only know the relation between Jat and Gujars and whatever is written. But we don't know pre-British relationship of that region, and it's not well written. For instance, I begin with telling the economic history of that region. That was the region actually whose during entire Mughal period was run by from Delhi, and then most of the principalities was headed by the Nawabs and Sayyids actually. That was the entire region was a Sayyid and Nawabs actually. I think we have also S. Irfan Habib here, one of the Sayyids, somewhere in the centers in JNU. So, and he knows better the relationship between them. And if you interview with people, and if you write this relationship between all different communities, not only just Jat and Gujar, or not only this about Arya Samaj, but also simultaneously write the history of Jamaat Islami and this there's another one which is locally works with Dewan Madrasa. without knowing that, it's very difficult to see how to frame this question. So, I can easily agree with you that there was a kind of the religious sentiment which converted into, through Arya Samaj and through, political discourse, and then it's of course there's a religion, and there's another religion, and there's another religion. There's a Buddhist, there are Christians, there are Hindus, and there all sort of religions are happening. But we don't have there's multi community interaction and their history. So that's why it's very. So one way it's very easy to say yes, it was a Hindutva, it was already there, and it was just pumped up. But it's a complex question. Without knowing that there's 200 years of history, you can't say it, because the principalities will govern. You ask these communities and go, and the story they would tell you, then it's very difficult to theorize these stories. You see, so I know I'm avoiding the question in one way and agreeing with Ajay. I'm saying yes, we can agree with you, but I'm also warning same time that conclusion may not be valid. Okay, because we have very little data, very little social history. That I would say.
Yes.
There was
Yes.
I just have a single question, right? With the mobilization of capital, certain little boats have become irrelevant, like Shidala Mata in the North Indian context, and people started worshipping, say, Sandoshi Mata. So she assures, I'm just simplifying your question that way. I've seen that, because I teach in Delhi University, I've seen some of my students from the community. One of the valid arguments, reasons they say that why they worship Sandoshi Mata instead of Shidala Mata is that compared to Shidala Mata, Sandoshi Mata assures prosperity, wealth management, and also avoids a lot of other complications like jealousy, evil eye. As a social anthropologist, how would you look at it? This shift from, say, Shidala Mata to Sandoshi Mata worship.
Let us collect these three questions, and yes.
Sir, I would love to read your book. It's a very interesting work, sir. But I have a concern here. Sir, I did an ethnography of 100 villages in Coastal Andhra, where I also looked at how lower caste Dalits, they are mobilizing towards DCs. And there, earlier scholarship that address this question in the form of a binary. Say, for instance, in North, they try to understand that in terms of Sanskritization, and then in South, they try to understand in terms of ethnicization. So when you try to bring in ethnographies, but in my ethnography, I found that there is a mobilization in multiple cities where similar, which resonates with your point of how Gujars, in the context of Gujars, how they are also mobilizing in multiple cities. But my question is, since I am a political science student, I don't stop at anthropology, the concerns of anthropology or ethnography. Despite the fact that there are non-conflictual relationships, I still try to understand from a political science vantage point, is there any marginalization that can still happen? Who is the real victim? Who is the most marginalized among the marginalized? So that is my concern of how you address that. So that is the difference actually between anthropology and political science, where we don't stop at, we don't try to bust the agistic theories just through ethnography. We try to understand, go into the deeper questions of how power is working at the local context.
So he's keeping the political science flag flying.
I totally support your flag. He's converted. I totally support your flag.
So I am Pankaj. I have a couple of questions. So I have only read your introduction, and that too last year. So in the introduction, you made this point that the Gujar view of democracy is neither modern nor traditional. It's popular. So I did not understand what was the rationale behind making this move. Can't we analyze popular in terms of modern, either being modern, either being popular? Or do you see this binary between, or this debate between modern or traditional is something which is misleading one? That's why you used it. So just clarify that. Secondly, you are saying that there is a religious turn of caste. But any scholarship of caste would tell that caste was always religious. So what is so specific about this religious turn of caste which you are flagging in? And thirdly, what is this specific about Gujjar view of democracy, which is different from Jat view of democracy, Yadav view of democracy? Does it add anything which the democratic theorists might have missed? So what is this urge to say that there is a Gujjar view of democracy against which it is posed? So these are three questions that I have. Thanks.
I'll come next on. I'll come in next.
So you have a bunch of questions now.
So I'll begin with Sitla Mata. I think that's my favorite. So, well, I think you made a point, a very interesting point, and that is what one of the chapters deal with that. Like in anthropology, we'll call it the connection between little tradition and great tradition, but not exactly the gentleman was asking a very interesting question. What is the rational behind what? I think in anthropology don't look at the rational behind it. Actually, we'll come back to that. But the point is that how this connection, how they transform one God to another, or higher God. If you are familiar with I think other domain of life, there is also this whole idea of how lower life can be transformed to higher life, and that's also very purposive. As the times and economy change, in 1980s, I think Veena Das has written a wonderful, paper on Santoshi Mata. I heard stories because when I was collecting the stories of this Santoshi Mata, there was no Santoshi Mata in pre-1980s.
Till the film came.
Exactly, the film came and then temple came, and I thought there was also need to come the God. Time needed a God because a lot of anxiety. In 80s, as the agriculture economy started, the stagnation, production has started, taking seat back, and the jobs were becoming scarce. New generation came into the looking for jobs. So you need a God to go somewhere. Can you give me a job? And you don't have any job, so I'll find another God. Can you give me a job? So they found Santoshi Mata who could give some peace and God, and many people told them that this is the right Devi, right deity to, and that's, I think you are still doing the same thing. Look at the top of the political leadership. You're asking the job from that, nothing else. So I would say I think the transformation of God, I have discussed whole chapter how the Devnarayan have also come in the picture. Instead of Kul Devtas and linear deities are taking back seat, and also is, I think, demand of time and is this kind of interlinkages between the economy, if you ask the broader questions, and the economy and politics and the kind of political mobilization across the country. That's needed. New God. Look at why Devnarayan emerged, because there was a movement for ST, claiming for the ST status in Rajasthan, and you needed someone existing God. You needed another God also to support that movement for unity. So I think that would be my response, and I think your flag I totally support, and I submit to that your flag. I have no objection to your flag. Okay, so I was not saying I'm just only busting it, but there is also attempt to find most marginalized, and this is an unending quest. You can also claim tomorrow you are the most marginalized, and then I can also claim, because there are various ways how we define marginalization. One way of defining in political lexicon and economy, there are also psychological and also domestic. And the beauty of any theory is that who combine all of them. Is not that you just have only one kind of marginalization. Okay, so it does not only come from the one domain. Look at the domestic. Look at the unstated hidden spaces. That I would respond that way, but I support your flag. Okay, and well, I think I think I tried to clarify this question of popular domain between modern and traditional, yeah. And it's very intentional choice of that, if you say modern, what I'm saying that popular is a khichdi where everything comes in everyday life. You can use everything without any contestation. Because as soon as you say political modernity, it is a particular lineage. Political modernity is emergence, is development, is the institutions. It all has a history, genealogy when you say political modernity. And when you say tradition, it has also particular location when you start talking about, and it's also very contested when you say. But then there is a domain where you look at me actually. I am a khichdi standing in front of you. Look at me, my clothing style, neither Western nor Indian, or you can't tell them anything. But still I am talking to you. You see, that's why I said the popular, which is more accessible to ordinary. When I say popular, you can say ordinary, which is accessible. That is what I try to say it. Hope it clears. Rest, please read the conclusion carefully and then we find answer.
I've read the introduction and few chapters. Hope you don't mind I'm asking the question now.
Not I was.
No. Yeah. So, Rajarshi sir's question just it poked me into thinking. And this is a question to you and to, Rajarshi sir can respond as well. And something that emerged out of the discussion. So I thought, whenever we have this discussion between elite, subaltern, modern, traditional, there is always this question of whether we as social scientists, coming from a standpoint, can have an external normative framework to judge the actions of the subaltern or not. Whether it's traditional, modern, fuzzy, whatever it is. Whether that external normative framework can exist or not. And to this, maybe it's extra political or non-political, that external normative framework. But does that mean, and this is a question to you, Mr. Dasgupta, does that mean that we won't use that? The Constitution is extra political in some sense. The law is so in some sense, in a larger sense, but it frames politics. So do we abandon that completely simply because it's extra political? That's one query that I had. The second was to the chapter on the strongman, since it's a interest area that I also share. So I just wanted to know that wherein you have this category of Daku and Dabang in the chapter, and at the same time you try to delineate the terms, what does it connote, and at the same time you show a larger historical trajectory. How they are situated how the modern notion of a Dabang is situated. It has a history, right? You try to do that. I just wanted to know, reading the larger literature on strongman, and when I read, histories of social banditry, one of the things that, popped up was that most of the bandits who were coming in 50s, 40s, before that, or even till 60s, 70s, they were from very marginal caste. And one of the social historians, one of the reasons that they give is that dacoity was a response to the oppressive feudal structure by marginal caste. So it was a form of resistance. One can read that, and that's why there is a whole literature on social banditry. But what is specific about modern notions of Dabangai or strongman politics that we see today is that most of the people who indulge in them are from upper caste and dominant caste. So how do you delineate that this modern Dabangai is sociologically, I thought, is different from earlier forms of dacoity? So that's the two questions that I have.
So I have a very simple question. When India accepted LPG, liberalization, privatization, devolution, then there is a big crisis in job cutting, and there is cutting in welfareism. So there is any linkage between the origin of goddess, different kind of goddess or goddesses? How can you see?
Please, little bit more clarify.
There is in 1992 or 3, India accepted the LPG. And after LPG, there is a big problem created in our country on the policy level. So there is any linkage between origin of God and goddesses of this policy?
Okay. Yes. So,
Okay.
maybe we can conclude with this question if there is no other pressing question, because we're running out of time. Yes.
So it was for you also.
I'll come.
Anyway, so I think we are not, I think Supriya, right, it's a very important question, and we are not trying to say there's no normative and we don't need a normative or we don't engage with a normative. Point is something else. I think one of the point which I think missing is here, which I would try to, like, why do you need something external? Because do you want to operate in space? Because if you live in society, it's all included: ethics, normative, corruption, immoralities, moralities. So it's very difficult to, so if there is externalities there, but they're also embedded in a larger society and larger, and that's why you can maintain these normative. If the normative is outside of human society, existing in other planet, we can't engage them. So the normative has to be into that. And that's the question was, no, I mean, the question is very important, but we are trying to address it very differently. And that's the whole thing of what kind of political system we should have, what kind of a society we want to make, what kind of notion of justice we want to adopt, and what kind of definition should we have. That's how the quest is. I would try to say, I think that perhaps that what we are trying to say, and I don't know whether Rajashree agree or not. That is what my response to be there. So it's not about that. Is strong man. That's also a very interesting question, and I also grappled with that. But I think you also you answered it already. The difference, actually, if you like the history of banditry and this whole idea, because this is a very modern in the sense because it has interlinkages with the state. So it automatically tells you power structure. Who has created shadow state? So it's not that your social, whatever you are mentioning, if you read Holmes bomb and other, that's a very different history. But here they are nexus closely operating, and that's why it's a very caste specific. and more sadly, if you ask me, I have been, even if there is somebody from subaltern caste who try to assert into same lineage when challenging state or domination, they were killed by the state. Only protection was given to Dabangs because, as you mentioned, particular group, because they had a close nexus with power, state, and capital. And you can see that section which I wrote about it, but also other writing. Lucia has written also fantastically about it. Yeah. So that is what. Is there anything else? You can ask more. I was joking because I said you can read it. Okay, you can ask more. Thank you so much. You're most welcome.
30 seconds to respond.
Please.
What I wanted to say, let me put it like this, because of brevity and lack of time. When you are thinking about the normative, there are two ways of doing it. Sometimes when you think about the normative, what we are missing out is that we are also thinking about the normal. Okay? Normativity is not something foreign or alien to the political. Okay, but there is a way of dealing with the normative as if it lies outside the political, as if there is no politics in the normative. Normative as normal means it always creates abnormalities, pathologies, so which becomes then the site of source for new kind of politics. Okay? So it's not about letting go of the normative, it's about letting go of older ideas of the normative, which exist in a separate kind of sphere, as opposed to the pragmatic and political. Okay, so that was, yeah.
So thank you so much. It was wonderful. And to get back to that question that you were raising, can we, your